Well, hello. It's good to see you today. My Bible is open to Luke chapter 17. Luke chapter 17. Our reading today, and today is Tuesday, March the 9th, comes from this chapter. And this is during Jesus' Perean ministry. And there are a lot of things that I would like to comment on in Luke chapter 17, but in order to keep this video brief, I'm going to just restrict our comments to the first few verses of the chapter and some of the things that Jesus says there as he talks about forgiveness. And I guess if I had to give a title to the video today, which I don't normally do that, but if I had to do that, if I was pressed to do that, I would say that this video is about having faith enough to forgive. And you'll see why I give it that title as we read through this together. So let's start in Luke 17 and verse 1. Then he said to the disciples, "It is impossible that no offenses should come, but woe to him through whom they do come. It would be better for him if a millstone were hung around his neck and he were thrown into the sea, than that he should offend one of these little ones." So Jesus starts off by talking about offenses, by talking about stumbling blocks. Some translations will use that expression in other places. Stumbling blocks, offenses. We do not want to be the one who causes someone else to offend or to stumble. Jesus says, if that's what we're going to do, if we're going to be a cause of stumbling or a cause of offense in someone else's life, he says it would be better for us for a millstone to be tied around our neck and for us to be thrown into the sea. Now, we're talking here about a stone that would be used to grind up corn or grain from a mill. If you've ever seen some of these kinds of stones, they're great big stones. And they would usually have maybe an animal tied to them, like a donkey or a horse or something like that, an ox. And that ox or that donkey would just walk in a circle, and that stone would turn as the animal is walking in that circle, and it would just grind and crush whatever it is that you put inside the mill. So Jesus says it would be better for a large stone like that to be tied around your neck and you thrown into the sea, left to drown, than for you to be guilty of causing someone else to stumble or to sin. And so after giving this statement about it would be better if this happened, as opposed to what awaits you if you are a cause of offense in someone else, then notice in the next verse, in verse 3, he says, "Take heed to yourselves." Look at that warning. Because of this, because of the seriousness of causing others to stumble, you better watch. Take heed to yourself that you are not a source of stumbling in someone else's life. How could we do that? How could we be a source of offense in someone else's life? Maybe it's through our words. Maybe it's through our actions. But through our words, and can I add something here? Maybe our social media posts. That counts as our words too, does it not? Maybe through the things that we put out on the internet for the world to see, that we put out on social media for other people to read and consider. We may be causing someone else to stumble because of the things that we say or the actions that we do. And Jesus says, watch out. Take heed to yourself. Now we continue reading in verse 3. "If your brother sins against you, rebuke him. Tell him. Talk to him." Matthew 18, verses 15 through 18 talks about this same idea. If your brother sins against you, go and talk to him. So Jesus says, if he sins against you, rebuke him. Call him out on it. Now, there's a right way and a wrong way to do that. And again, if I could go back to what I said a moment ago about social media, that's not the way to do it. If you ever find yourself wondering, should I call attention to someone else's deeds or words on Facebook? The answer is no. Don't go out and air your dirty laundry out there for the world to see until, in fact, maybe I shouldn't even say that, but you certainly should never do that without having first gone to your brother and talked to him about what he did, without having gone to him and addressed the issue. So Jesus says, if he sins against you, rebuke him. And if he repents, forgive him. Jesus taught about forgiveness quite a bit. And I think it's understandable why he would do that. After all, he is the one through whom forgiveness will be offered to the entire world and to the most vile of people. He is the one who will make forgiveness and reconciliation with God possible. And so it shouldn't surprise us that Jesus talked about this quite a bit. If he repents, forgive him. And now notice what he adds to this. And if he sins against you 7 times in a day, and 7 times in a day returns to you saying, I repent, you shall forgive him. Does this seem like a far-fetched kind of a scenario? I mean, 7 times in a day, really? Would someone really sin against me that often in a single day? Well, I suppose it could happen. But is Jesus using some figure of speech here? Is he speaking a little bit hyperbolically? Most likely he is. But the point remains. No matter how often someone sins against me, if they repent, I should forgive. I must forgive. Think about how many people sinned against the Lord. Think about how Jesus on his cross said, Father, forgive them. They do not know what they are doing. So Jesus says, up to 7 times in a single day. If someone sins against you 7 times in a day and they repent, you forgive. Now notice what the apostles say next. Verse 5. Increase our faith. Don't separate that from what Jesus has just said. The apostles say it's going to take great faith to be able to live like this, to be able to extend forgiveness to someone who sinned against me 7 times in a day. It's going to take great faith to do that. And that's exactly right. It does. I had a Bible study just this morning with some people who we were talking about this together. Not this text, but we were talking about forgiveness. And we were talking about bitterness and how sometimes people make mountains out of molehills, and we hold grudges and we hold on to things for a long time, maybe even years. And it just creates bitter resentment between us and another person. And so often that grudge that we hold is over something so small. We were actually studying Acts chapter 7 and the story of Stephen's death. And do you remember that Stephen was preaching before the Sanhedrin, and they didn't like what he was preaching, and the text says in Acts 7 that they dragged him out of the city and began stoning him with stones. And it says that as they were doing that, he looked up into heaven, he saw Jesus standing at the right hand of God, and he said, forgive them. Stephen had the presence of mind to pray for the forgiveness of his perpetrators while they were in the midst of taking his life. And so often we get all bent out of shape over the smallest of things. Why do we do that? Is it because we don't have enough faith? Is it because we don't have enough maturity to really understand what's going on? Lord, increase our faith so that we have enough faith to forgive the way that you forgive, the way that you call us here to forgive. Search your heart. Do you have a grudge? Do you have bitterness and resentment towards someone in your life? Do you have that in your heart? And if you were really honest, and if you were objectively looking at this, could you stand back and look at this and say, you know what, in the grand scheme of things, this is really not a big deal. I need to make this right. Go make it right. I heard a man say once, and I think he's right, that some of the hardest words in the English language to say are the words, I'm sorry, and I forgive you. I wish we didn't struggle with that as much as we do. Faith enough to forgive. Thanks for reading with me today. God bless you.